Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Get out of the Promoter 101.
This is Bob Rue with Live Nation, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the show that never ends. The official count puts us at episode 72 of the Promoter 101 podcast. I, of course, am Luke Pierce, calling this one today with my good friend Steiny.
I don't know that it never ends, Luke, but what the hell? How you doing, my friend? We have got a full house of industry power players. So let's just jump right into it. We've got Paradigm Sam Hunt talking about his success in the business from his early days working with Tom Windish and his current days with Diplo and Run the Jewels. It doesn't seem to end for him.
Sam is absolutely killing it. After that, we're going to be joined by one of Canada's last independent concert promoters, the Tony Robbins of the North himself. Invictus Entertainment's Jim Cressman will join us to talk about his successes in Canadian country music.
Ticketmaster's David Marcus returns to walk us through exactly what Verified Fan is. You've heard about it. Now they're actually going to explain what it is, it does, and how it works. And it's great. You got to hear it.
And Greg Parmley is going to join us for an ILMC preview. Plus, we'll break down the news of the week.
This is Dave Shapiro, Mike Mills,
Sam Hunt, Joey Scolari,
Rich Best,
Tim Sweetwood,
Andy Levitt,
Sarah Beasley,
Jared Paul,
Bobby Clay,
John Phillips,
Greg Parmley,
Harvey Cohen,
Rich Schaefer.
This is Eric Mayers, and I am live
on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Dan and I are finishing up the world tour. Come catch us live at a live taping, Promoter 101.
We'll be crossing the pound next week at ILMC at the Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington, London. That's the International Live Music Conference, March 8th, 5 p.m. I'll be moderating Tales from the Frontline with my good friend, manager Paul Crookford. We've also got some amazing guests, Nikki Wright, Michael Husking, and Ozzy Hope.
On Tuesday, July 24th, it's the IAVM's Venue Connect 2018. The promoter and agent panel will have a star-studded lineup, including CA's Brian Hill, APA's Ralph James, Emporium Presents, Jason Zink, Frank Productions, Charlie Goldstone, Live Nation's Riley O'Connor, and Dan will be moderating and doing the honors in Toronto, Canada. Check it out.
Kind of excited to get in there with Riley O'Connor. That guy is just an absolute legend. You're talking about like Bill Graham level guy from Canada, and man, epic, and still doing it now. It's just great. I'm looking forward to that. And it's Hill, Zink, Charlie, Ralph James. I mean, that guy's in the Canadian Hall of Fame. It's going to be a good time, Luke. Feel free to reach out to us by sending us an email anytime you want. It's Steiny@promoter101.net. You can reach out to both of us at that email address, and one of us is bound to respond to you.
Keep up with us on Twitter. I'm at WLuke Pierce, Dan's at The Jew, and the show is at Promoters101. That is Promoters, plural.
We probably say plural more than any other podcast on the air today, Luke.
Plural, 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 plural.
Everybody drinks.
This is Darren Lashinsky from NS2, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
If you've missed any of our past podcasts, you can always catch up with us at Promoter101.net. This week, we feature a classic reissue of episode 30.
That podcast features Evenco's Nick Farkas talking about Osheaga and Heavy Montreal.
Also, ITB's Steve Zapp shares his thoughts on UK touring.
And 888 Management's Whitney Bond teaches us why management needs to be hands-on in the day-to-day marketing of all of their artist shows.
I know you agree with that, Luke.
I have no idea. Never seen a marketing plan in my life, Dan.
That doesn't sound right to me, Luke. My marketing team would definitely disagree with that statement.
Use the right photo, everybody.
Not the dead drummer.
Yeah.
It's hard to use the dead drummer in an a cappella group.
It really is.
Plus, Creative Law Network's Dave Ratner enlightens us on why you need to read things before you fucking sign them. Good advice from a lawyer.
It's time you subscribe to Promoter 101. It's not like this costs you anything. This is a free thing that Dan and I do for your benefits. So take 2 seconds and wherever you podcast, subscribe to Promoter 101 and tell a friend about this podcast. Send them an email and say, listen to Promoter 101.
And then you say, hey, man, you listen to this fucking podcast. Because people actually talk like that when they're talking to their friends.
It's actually true. You should hear me on the phone most of the times I talk with Dan.
Hey, this is Scott Scoville. I'm with Moo TV, and I'm on Promoter 101.
News of the week.
It's Time for the news of the week. We got to start off with some bright news in the world of live entertainment. Live Nation, 7th straight record year, posting revenues of $10.3 billion. That's a 24% increase, an astounding $2 billion gain from the year prior. Many highlights to follow, and congratulations to Michael Rapino and the many talented folks, the Live Nation family.
Academy of Country Music, ACMs, announced their nominees this morning. Chris Stapleton leads the way with 8 nominations, including his first for Entertainer of the Year. Well, that just seemed like it was bound to happen, don't you think, Luke?
I think it does, Dan. Probably well overdue.
Thomas Rhett earned 6 nominations. Miranda Lambert was out there with 4 nominations. And the ACM are slated for Sunday, April 15th in Las Vegas. Reba McEntire will have the honors of hosting. Love me some Reba.
Looking forward to a great weekend in Las Vegas.
You going?
Home Free will be performing at the ACM after parties. I will be there, and you can find me on Saturday afternoon at Topgolf playing the ACM's Lifting Lives events, where I will be kicking some ass, hitting some wedges into 10 feet.
If you have never met Luke in person, look for the Merlot-colored pants and boat shoes.
I was just thinking about actually what I'll probably wear. It will be some combination of boat shoes that day. Some other news on the street, as they say, Spotify filing this week for their initial public offering. That's an IPO. The much-awaited filing from the Swedish streaming giant happened this past Wednesday. And for the first time, Dan, we got to look at the finances of this company. We saw rising revenues and relatively steady operating costs, with their revenue growing to about $5 billion, $4.99 billion. In 2017, that's up almost $1 billion from $2.95 billion in 2016. However, their operating loss widened from $349 million to $379 million during the same time. And this IPO has the company valued at $19 billion. As we've talked about on this podcast before, Spotify will file for a direct listing. That means they won't be using any sort of institutional bank to underwrite this. This means we can probably expect a lot of yo-yoing and volatility in the first couple days of trading. The company is set to trade at the New York Stock Exchange under SPOT.
19 billion here, 20 billion there. It all adds up, Luke. These billion-dollar things. It just, at some point, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it really is.
What's $1 billion between friends, Dan?
I really wouldn't fucking know.
I really wouldn't know either.
We're still trying to handle the M word. We're not quite at the B word yet.
Yeah, we're not quite at the B word.
It's funny when you mean the B word in a whole different way, and it makes sense to everyone. Hey, the Dallas Cowboys have taken an equity position in SeatGeek instead of renewing with Ticketmaster. This is an interesting move, as their deal is set to expire at the end of the month, Luke.
Yeah, it's interesting because Jerry Jones is investing in a Live Nation competitor. That's a concert business that puts most of the shows coming through AT&T Stadium in Dallas. It's a serious part of his business, but fortunately, he's the really only game in town for stadium tours that are rolling through Dallas. And interestingly enough, as we talked about the Live Nation earnings call this week, Michael Rapino had a comment on there about the failure to renew, is what it was presented as, of the Ticketmaster deal, saying that SeatGeek overpaid for it and that this is essentially a loss leader for that company. So this signals to us that SeatGeek is trying to buy their way into the primary ticketing market in a very significant way. And obviously Dallas and Jerry Jones putting their money where their mouth is here, trying to help them along the way.
This is something we've seen from ticket companies over and over again, to overpay to get the client to get into the business. It seems like it's always been the way to do business in the last 15 years or so, because Ticketmaster is such a leader in that space. Anyone else that wants to come into it is going to have to write a check to get promoters' attention.
We'll see how this plays out. I'm sure that they're going to be framing the deal in the next couple of weeks as they make a formal announcement about this. All of this coming through some great reporting by Darren Rovell at ESPN and Dave Brooks and his team at Amplify Magazine, who had a nice write-up about it. You should go check it out in more detail. They have some amazing analysis. Shout out Dave Brooks. We got to offer a quick shout out to Brandi Carlile, who notched her second #1 album on the Billboard rock charts. By the Way, I Forgive You is also her fourth #1 on the Americana Billboard charts. And we at Promoter 101 are loving the joke. Give it a listen this week.
Seattle Girl makes good. Way to go, Brandi.
Hello there, Andy Summers from APA and Promoter 101. Happy to be here.
And finally, we want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on C3 Presents Jen Adams. She is a whiz marketing manager and a great hang, making her this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to you, Jen.
Hey, it's Mary Hilliard Harrington with Red Light Management. You're listening to Promoter 101.
We're now joined for a special ILMC preview with the conference's fearless leader, Greg Parmley.
Thank you so much for coming out and talking to us.
No problem at all. Good to be here.
2018 is off to a banner start, and you guys are up next for the big conferences. What are we going to see?
Bunch of stuff coming up this year. I mean, we're particularly happy. It's our 30th anniversary, so 30 long years. So there's a bunch of stuff really planned around that. But in terms of the conference panels and the schedule itself, there's a whole bunch of topics, one of which is Tales from the Frontline Part 2. Lots of stories about touring tales when things go wrong, which, Steiny, I believe you're chairing yourself.
With Paul Kirkford, which is going to be fun because guy's amazing.
Fantastic. And then aside from that, there's a whole bunch of other topics, really. So big session on ticketing this year. David Marcus from Ticketmaster is coming over to talk to us a little bit about Fan Verified and lots of other kind of topics on that, including the ever controversial secondary ticketing.
He is, without a doubt, one of the best public speakers I've ever seen.
Yeah, completely agree. So, I mean, we're really thrilled that he's going to be over for that, actually. Big session this year on gender and inclusivity in the live music industry, which is being chaired by Natasha Bent at Coda Agency in the UK. As I'm sure you guys are having the same conversations over here, there's lots of discussion right now about, gender and inclusivity within live and, following on from the Me Too campaign. So that's going to be a big topic. We've got a big session on ethics this year as well. So whether there's a slightly better way for us all to be a little bit nicer to each other, really, when we're working day to day. Other big topics as well, Festival Summit 2018 and the Venue Summit 2018. So a day of dedicated festival topics, a day of dedicated venue topics. Security is obviously going to be a big one for us. It really follows up on an event that we started last year called the Event Safety and Security Summit. So we've got a kind of a mixture of sort of security professionals, promoters and agents on that, really talking about what comes next after Manchester and Vegas. Big music business kind of broad brushstrokes panel where we're inviting one senior label, one senior publisher, big name manager, promoter and an agent to sort of talk about the business and where it's going next. And then we've also got a pretty full workshop schedule as well, which is dedicated 60-minute sessions that we run. So we're looking at things like blockchain, cryptocurrency, virtual reality, augmented reality, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's looking like a really strong schedule this year, and we're really excited. We're just 4 weeks out now.
You guys take yourself a little less seriously than most of the other conferences, and you've got some really just fun categories.
Well, second least offensive agent or first venue to come into your head. We used to have one called the most strokeable manager as well, although we haven't run that for a few years.
I also really love, and I think people should adopt this, the best assistant. I love that you guys do that.
Yeah, we've run that for a few years now, actually, and feedback has been really popular. I mean, these are the unsung heroes of the industry, really, who don't get that recognition that maybe they should.
Notice you guys haven't added best podcast host yet, but I'm waiting for it.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as there's 2, then maybe.
Right, well, I don't know that we need that. Some of the things that happen there, you guys do the karaoke every year, which is fun. I assume that's coming back.
Yeah, we do karaoke. There's a big poker night, poker and kind of casino night. We've got a big table football competition. There's an actual football competition, which tends to be the kind of UK versus the rest of the world. Everything that we do around ILMC is really about networking, but we try and make it as fun as possible.
The bar is the social mecca of that conference, like it is at no other conference. You see people in there drinking until 4 or 5 in the morning, and they just keep serving until people stop ordering. It's great.
I think last year they threw the last few stragglers out at 8:30
when they started serving breakfast.
Yeah, basically.
The Royal Garden is an amazing host hotel. The staff is incredible.
The hotel are fantastic. We've been in the Royal Garden for quite a long time now, so that they know us and we know them. I mean, it works really well.
It always seems like it's the Russians last in the bar. Those guys can drink, the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Yeah, some of those guys are pretty fierce, definitely, yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. We're counting the days to see you in London. Thank you so much, Greg.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steiny.
Love ILMC. Cannot wait to see all our friends when we cross the pond next week at the Royal Garden Hotel. It should be a hoot.
Hi, my name is Toby Leighton-Pope. I work for AG Presents in the UK, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
It's the name of the show, so let's talk about them. Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. Let's see what was going on in Dan's crazy and twisted mind this week. Let's start with this. A concert's like a meal. The opener is the app, the headliner is the entree, and the encore is the dessert.
So keep in mind, nobody wants a 7-course meal when it comes to stacking the bills with extra openers. Those metal shows with 7 openers, people are just in the bar wasting time, and maybe as the owner, that's what you want, people drinking. But I think fans want better shows, and they want to see the bands. Keep it to those 3-band bills, 2-band bills, and evening wit's always kind of fun, too.
Always fear the people in the business that don't give you their cell phone number.
Yeah, those guys only want your money, and they will not be around to help you when things go bad on a Sunday afternoon. Careful of those fuckers.
Some people look at the venue as half empty, others as half full.
I just look at the net, Luke.
And that'll do it for Promoter 101 Tweets of the Week. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He's at The Jew.
And you can follow Luke at WLukePierce.
I'm Johnny Fairplay on Promoter 101, and I wouldn't lie about that.
In our feature interview this week, we've got a special sit-down with Paradigm's Sam Hunt. He's going to join us to talk about his start in the business working for Tom Windish and his current successes with Diplo and Run the Jewels.
Paradigm's Sam Hunt, dude, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
You have one of the best set of years of any of the agents out there. You've had an amazing run discovering talent.
I have a lot of artists that have been relatively successful in their worlds, which has been really cool. I've had plenty of artists that I feel as confident about to this day that were not as successful. I suppose that over the years, my batting average is probably higher than a lot of people's, but I don't think that I'm particularly out of the ordinary with my ears. A funny thing that I do actually, maybe once or twice a year, I'll end up in like internet or iTunes K-holes where I will hear a song by an artist that I used to book and sort of re-experience the like thrill and vigor of hearing that song and being like, man, that band is so good. And then I'll go down the line of artists that I've worked with that weren't particularly successful, listen to all their songs that I like. And I think I made myself some sort of playlist of the greatest that never were.
The best of that didn't happen?
Yeah. And like if I could share a playlist that I have with anyone, that would probably be the one that I would be most excited to share because it's still things that I'm like, this is so good. It makes no sense to me that it wasn't more popular. I still think that this is like the best song that I heard of that year, or like the play count on my iTunes is in the triple digits for this and still climbing.
Who are a couple of the bands that weren't more successful that you really thought should have been?
The first band that I ever booked where I said, can I be your booking agent? And they said yes, was a band called Death Vessel. That sounds like it would be a metal band, but it actually was like a folk pop band fronted by a man with a very feminine voice that you would think was a woman if you listened without knowing. And his debut album was so good, I listened to it on Sunday. I thought it was one of the best albums that I'd heard that year. He got signed to Sub Pop via my encouraging and did 2 records for them. And I think that that was it. People really like him, like other bands really liked him, and the songs were great, but it just never really clicked. But even Sunday when I was driving around listening to it, I was like, if I could start all over again and give this artist a new name and present it as if it were brand new, I wonder if I could give it another crack. I feel more excited about, or as excited as anything else I'm working on. I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, my ears are perfect. It's everyone else's the problem.
That's fair. I feel that asking a band if you can be your booking agent is a fairly intimate thing.
I don't think that there's like a formal process, but I'm sure that I did it in the most awkward, stumbly way possible. I worked with Tom Windish at the Windish Agency for 11 years, or pretty much the entire time that it was around. The first 2 or 3 years, I was his assistant, and I kind of just sat in a small room with him, and we booked tours together, or he booked tours and I administered them. And he was not like, gather around, let me teach you a lesson type. He more just did things and I watched, or would send emails and I would end up seeing them and would read back and kind of figure it out. But then there were things like signing bands that I was not a part of that would happen in person or I wasn't able to listen in. So yeah, I probably just took a guess and I was like, I don't know how you sign a band. Call them up and be like, can I book you? And they say yes. Great. And if not, it's a little awkward, but I don't think that there was much of like a fight to sign Death Vessel. I think that I was probably the only person that had hit him up about anything. So it was more like, if you read between the lines, I'm a kid who doesn't really know what he's doing, but I'm interested in trying to help you and you want to like give that a shot. That was probably more the gist of it, or like, what do you have to lose, basically. The second act I signed, I remember the process was a little bit different because it was girl talk. It was during the heyday of Pitchfork being able to anoint someone unknown and vault them into the stratosphere, the relative Pitchfork stratosphere. And he was like the artist of the moment for them. So he was like a weird basement show, like experimental world, wolf eyes, noise jam, not someone who participated in like the more traditional music industry at all.
But that got quite big.
Yeah. But at the time, he was just kind of out to freak people out and make music. He did not see himself as like a participant in mainstream pop culture at all. And I remember having to sort of not convince him, but like make him understand that I understood the world that he was in because I too was in that world, at least somewhat. My background before being an agent was I worked at a small record label called Thrill Jockey that put out stuff that was a little weirder, a little more all over the place. And I ran a website that was sort of dedicated to fringe experimental music or music that was not generally covered. And I felt real weird being like, I'm cool. I promise. I get it. But it worked out.
So that must have been a fun ride. Your world at Windish, being on Tom's desk, becoming an agent, going through the whole rise of Windish, and which was a very exciting moment, I'm sure. And then watching the Paradigm partnership develop and grow into a full Paradigm absorption of you guys. That was a really successful run and rise, and obviously Paradigm is doing quite well. So it doesn't feel like you guys are at the top of that roller coaster yet. It's far from peaked.
Yeah, I mean, It's funny for me because I'm not a goal setter, really. I don't think that I ever did anything along this process that was like, what can I do to maximize every last drop? How do we make this agency the biggest, best, baddest agency of all time? At Windish, Tom absolutely had that attitude and was very goal-driven and very set on constantly expanding and improving. I was always kind of like, I'm going to do the best job I can with what I have. And as things arise, I'll take advantage of them the best I can and do what makes sense to me. And I think between the two of us, with his drive and my sitting at my desk and actually doing the stuff, it worked out real well for both of us. But thinking of it in the terms that you describe it is always kind of funny to me. It kind of seems like the two of us just leaping into the stratosphere, like nothing can stop us. And we're just like killing it no matter what we do. But my like specific memories of sitting in the shitty little 2-person office, booking small shows and high-fiving each other, thinking it was pretty cool.
Well, nobody really sends press releases out about their failures. I mean, you don't see that.
There may not be a press release, but probably in any industry, everyone else is very excited to know about and celebrate other people's failures, just as the gossip mill churns. I guess coming back to what you're trying to say, I'm doing a sort of roundabout way of clarifying what's in my mind, but I work in music because I love music. I work in touring, not because I love touring or because being a booking agent was what I always wanted to do. I just like music. I worked at a record store, and then I worked at a record label, and I worked at a record store because I thought it'd be a cool way to get discounts on CDs. And I worked at a label because I thought it was cool. I didn't really know what a label was. I just knew that it had to do with releasing records of artists that I really liked. And I got to work at Thrill Jockey, which was like my favorite label. And I was like, this is the coolest thing of all time. Like, I got it, Sam at thrilljockey.com. I have absolutely peaked that I have this email address. And the stuff that I liked, the peak of its success was playing like the Fillmore in San Francisco, where I grew up, or the Metro in Chicago, where I was living. When you played the Metro, you had made it. Whatever Pavement did, that was like my gold standard for potential for success for anything cool. So they played like 3 nights at Metro at one point, and I was like, man, it doesn't get much bigger than that. 3 nights at Metro, holy shit. I cannot believe they got so famous. So as I continued working through touring, whatever, my career, that was always like the gold standard, like those venues and those size shows. And at some point when I started working with things that were bigger than that, I was kind of like, man, I don't know. I kind of got done what I wanted to get done here. Like, I booked some shows at the Fillmore and the Metro and they sold out. That's pretty crazy. I have peaked. And everything after that, I was kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Play the bigger place. I guess we'll figure out how to do that.
Well, that was nice that you had Tom there while you were growing, because as your acts continued to get bigger, his acts were a couple steps ahead usually that had already played the arenas, right? So you had him there to be able to mentor you up with when you went to the bigger rooms, right?
Realistically, for many years, I was like his assistant and an agent on my own. I booked some stuff on my own, but then I also like worked on his stuff that tended to be bigger. At the very least, I would remain involved enough to like have a hand in it and see how it went. So most of the learning I did was just watching him and helping him and seeing how he did things and seeing how other people did things in response and trying to use my logic brain to discern what made sense and what didn't.
So now that you guys are at Paradigm, it must open up a vast number of resources being at an agency that's a full service agency. Has that changed how the approach is, or some of the things that you now see that maybe you hadn't thought about before?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of it as I had a Swiss Army knife before and now I have like a hardware store. It doesn't mean I need to like...
That's good.
There are so many more resources available and so much more knowledge. That doesn't mean that for every artist I work with, there are 15 different people in 15 different service departments that are relevant to them or need to help them. There's plenty of artists that I work with who are like, why do I need a film and TV person? I'm a band, I make music. Or why do I need branded opportunities? I'm not interested in that stuff. That's fine. I'm not like foisting other shit upon other people.
But the option's there.
Yeah. And beyond that, the level of mentorship and expertise is, to me, like near infinite, because there are just senior, legendary, hyper-intelligent agents with totally different histories and experiences and rosters who approach things from a completely fundamentally different way than the people at Windish did. I mean, there's no like defined culture or like set of characteristics or even process for working at Windish. It was very much like a team of individuals doing things their own way. And that in itself was sort of a unifying trait. But that meant that there was sort of like a finite approach to booking. Everyone sort of did things the way they did them, and that was that. So coming to Paradigm, when the way like Marty Diamond does something, or the way Johnny Edelman does something, or the way Lee Anderson does something, are like completely fundamentally different from the way we did things at Windish. And that's super awesome to see. That doesn't mean I'm going to go out and emulate exactly what they do, but there's like so much wisdom to pluck from each different person.
Find a hybrid of what works best for you.
Yeah. And maybe it's the way Aaron Pincus structures his deals, or the way Lee schedules his phone calls, or the way Marty communicates with his managers, or something, anything like that. Like the way I've always operated is seeing what other people do and trying to collect what I can from it that makes sense or doesn't make sense. And that's been cool to experience and cool to watch other people experience.
You're in Oakland. Is that right, or is it Berkeley?
I live in Oakland and our office just moved to Berkeley. Me and Amy Davidman are in the office out there.
The two of you guys being by yourselves opposed to in any of those other massive offices, does that have a different vibe for you, or is that something you carved out intentionally?
It's something that I carved out intentionally. There are pluses and minuses. I travel to the New York and LA offices reasonably often. I really like doing that, and I like seeing everyone and hanging out in the Paradigm culture. But I also just personally find that I work best and am most productive if I can sit in my office and just work all day long. Worked in offices at Windish for a long time, surrounded by other people. And again, I really like that. Like socially, it's really fun. But I sort of know the way I work well enough to know that like that is the best situation for me if what I'm trying to do is the best job I can for my clients.
No distraction, just put your head down and do your thing.
Yeah.
Do you wind up going down to the Paradigm office in Monterey now that you have that connection?
Not as often as I should. The distance is a real like mental block for me. And it's been great getting to know Dan and Fred in that office. And again, I should spend more time there. But usually when faced with that prospect, I'm kind of like, I should just stay at my desk.
That's 5 hours of extra work you can get done.
Yeah. If there's like an Amtrak I could take down there, it'd be a different story.
You have an amazing run of artists on your roster that are doing really well. Run the Jewels has just had an explosive run on their album cycle of festivals, big dates, selling out basically everything everywhere. What was that ride like?
It's so awesome working with them because when I started working with them, they were effectively a new artist. There was no such thing as Run the Jewels previously. But LP and Killer Mike are both artists who've been in music for a really long time, since they were very young, both like in their teens maybe. They are extremely humble and extremely appreciative of everything that they achieve and everything that happens to them, and extremely grateful. When they put out the first Run the Jewels record, they weren't stars in their eyes like, more. We need this. Why are we not getting this? Why is this person doing this and we're not? They were more like, holy shit, this is amazing. We've both been rapping for our whole lives, hoping for something like this. So their feeling trickles down through everything they work on, which makes it as rewarding as booking an artist can be because they're so sincere and so appreciative and so happy and so excited. No opportunity is taken for granted and no step that they achieve feels like, whatever, yeah, great, we sold another show. Like, where's the after party?
They're super enthusiastic about the process.
Yeah, everything that they put out into the world is totally legitimate, and that's super cool.
You had a great moment last year here at the Polestar Conference. You wound up winning Agent of the Year, and the band was on stage to present you with the heavyweight championship belt.
Diplo and his manager.
Talk about a cool thing to have that kind of support from your artist.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was very unexpected to be nominated even. I just assumed Kirk Summer would win. He was coming off the Adele tour. It's about as big as it gets. I had been involved in some shows that I thought were pretty exciting and remarkable and cool. The Major Lazer show in Cuba, the Diplo show in Pakistan, and Run the Jewels had a big run. That was a cool little run that I'd had, but yeah, I wasn't expecting to win, and I'm still sort of surprised that I did.
Clearly that speaks to how people enjoy working with you and the vibe out there. And
I'm sure that I'm a dick to people plenty often or short or whatever, but I really do try to be nice and reasonable to people as much as I can and make life easier on them and hope that they make life easy on me. As far as like support from artists, like, yeah, that's super nice. And a lot of people that I've worked with for their entire careers. Like Diplo, I had worked with. He was one of the first people when I started working at Windish, was sort of hanging out on the roster that Tom had signed because he signed automatically kind of everything that was signed to Ninja Tune Records. And I was really into his record, and I don't think Tom really knew a whole lot about it. So I sort of took more ownership over it. And that was like 2015 probably. I would like to think that it's cool and meaningful for them that as their successes have continued to improve, that I've been sort of with them helping in tangible or intangible ways throughout.
Major Lazer show in Cuba was an international news story. It's just a crazy different process. Like, how did that all come together?
It was unlike any show that I'd ever worked on before, obviously, and how it came together sort of required everyone taking the bones of what they know about putting on shows and events, putting that in the back of your mind, but basically starting from scratch and just saying, here's a situation, let's try and reason our way through this from start to finish, and thinking creatively and outside the box and setting aside tenets or things that you just assume to be true and being flexible and hoping for the best.
It was done as a free show, right?
Yeah, there was no like intuitive way for how to do it. Making money off of it was really hard, or charging money was really hard because Not like people in Cuba have tons of disposable income to spend on shows. So we had sort of been like lightly canvassing for ways we could possibly figure it out. I got an unsolicited email from someone who had sort of a vague concept for a festival or an event that he wanted to do in Cuba. And I replied, and I don't know how common this is. I guess I sort of assume that it's relatively common, but maybe it's not. But like, I reply to just about every email that I get, even if it's like some Yahoo with no real information. Like, I'll usually at least like kind of chase it down just to see what the deal is, or maybe at the very least he or she will say something weird and I'll be like, what a freak. So this dude from Cuba who I'd never heard of emailed me with this big concept, and he was going to be in New York, and it turned out that he had also earlier reached out to Major Laser's manager. So we were like, we should meet up and have a conversation. So we all met up in New York, probably November of 2014, and they pitched us this whole like broad this and that, and we were like, none of this stuff is going to happen, but we're really interested in trying to play in Havana. So let us know how you think we should do that. He was like, you have to come to Havana in 3 weeks. We'll meet with my friend who works in the Cuban government and we'll figure it out from there. We were kind of like, yeah, okay, sure. We'll go to Cuba and see what we can learn.
What a fun trip.
So me and Major Laser's manager, Andrew McInnes, and Ross Hallman, who runs SHO Services, the security company. And yeah, we had this like weird, surreal, like 2 days. It was for me a nightmare because there's no internet in Cuba. So it was like, honestly, like this is going to sound shitty or embarrassing, but I don't think I've spent 2 weekdays, maybe even 1 full weekday, without having access to my email.
People must have thought you were like dead or hurt or something, because you respond really quickly.
I woke up the first night in like a cold sweat worrying about some radius issue that I thought that I had violated. And I was like, there's no way I can even find out if I did this. It turned out to be nothing, but I was like, man, this is a sad state of affairs if I'm like this reliant on it. Anyway, yeah, they took us around to a bunch of different locations, and we met with the Cuban Minister of Culture, and I had brought like 15 USB drives that I gave to him to give to all of his people, and we have a very funny photo that I was hoping would make it into the documentary, but didn't, of all of us huddled around his computer, and he's this like little old man watching Major Lazer videos, and so he could sort of deem it of cultural value or not. And then he was like, yeah, this seems cool. We should do this. And we were like, oh, okay, great. What do you need from us? He's like, can I have one of these USB drives? We own all the TV channels, so I'll just start putting it on TV. And we're like, go for it. It would take me days to sort of explain all of the other weird episodes between then. It got delayed a bunch. Getting DJ gear into Cuba was like a 3-week conversation because you can't buy it there. We couldn't ship it from the US. We had to like buy it from Mexico and have someone bring it over there. One thing that we did that was extremely successful was, because there's no real widespread functional internet there, the way people get digital media is this thing called El Paquete, which is on a USB drive, and once a week you get your USB drive refilled, and it has like that week's New York Times and Game of Thrones and like the NBA All-Star Game and the Academy Awards or whatever.
This is your culture for the week?
Yeah, pretty much. Like what you get in the internet and cable and whatever else trickled over the course of the week, you get it in one big burst. I don't know if other people have like actively promotionally worked with them before, but we gave them every piece of Major Lazer media that we could find, all the songs, all the videos, photos, articles and stuff, and gave it to the Paquete guy and was like, put this in your this week or however many weeks, and here's info about the show. It's free. Everyone should come. And that was extremely successful. And I think that there is a huge youth population in Cuba that has access to, in a roundabout way, the same sort of media you have access to if you live in Puerto Rico or Jamaica or Miami. There's just nothing you can really do about it. The media that you ingest is beyond El Paquete, is confined to what's available for you in Cuba, which is improving and increasing, but is very finite. And people don't come play concerts. And there's not like the Blockbuster Cineplex you can go to with all of your friends. And that's certainly not to say there's no culture. We went to like a renegade party in the forest. That was one of the coolest things I've ever gone to. It was like 10,000 kids dancing to music that was like maybe 3 years past its American prime. And it was fun, the same way that it would be fun anywhere. You know, that's a limited resources, doing what you can. So having someone make the effort and come out there was very meaningful and exciting, and it sort of established or proved that there was this like massive youth culture that was really thirsty for something like that. And with Diplo, we've had similar experiences in other further reaching places like Bangladesh and Pakistan, where those places there is the internet and there is even more access to media and resources and information and culture. But again, no one that is creating that media actively participates in it, because no one wants to go to those places because there's not real money to be made, or it's dangerous or scary, or there's not really an infrastructure that supports going there and participating.
All reasons that would eliminate those markets in a lot of people's minds.
Right. Or even if you want to do it, like when you get down to like the nitty gritty of actually making it happen, there's too many questions or it's too risky.
Can I ask you about the promoter versus agent scandal from a couple of years back, where it was...
That was a Tumblr page that me and Houston Powell ran very successfully for a number of years.
Did you know who was really doing it, or was that when that came out with his face on it, did that totally catch you guys off guard?
I was a huge fan of it. I never had any idea who it was.
So when your face popped up, it was a shock to you?
I knew that everyone thought it was me, or that I was involved somehow. People were varying degrees of confident about it, but some people were like absolutely 100% confident where it wasn't even worth talking about. They just knew for sure that it was me. And I really loved that. I got more out of that probably than if it actually had been me. Because even people that I knew very well.
But you didn't know it was Joe and Scott.
I had no idea.
Oh, that's awesome.
And when they published that it was me in Houston, that was even better. Because then it really drove it home, and Dave Brooks lost his mind and was like, we got to do an agent versus promoter panel with us. And I was kind of like, maybe, but I don't know if it's a good idea. Like, it would sort of cheapen the brand. Like, I played along with it as best I possibly could. And while it was really fun and funny to learn who it actually was, and as fortune would have it, I was at the table with the group of people that figured out who it was when they figured it out.
You were there when the internet gap happened?
I was there, but it was really the end of an era.
I'm glad they're keeping it going, but obviously it's changed a little bit of how hard they're swinging on some of those things.
Yeah, it's still hilarious. Pretty good at the internet and internet culture in general, but for some reason, connecting funny situations with animated GIFs is like I have a real mental block against it, and I've never really been able to do it. So the fact that there were two people who were excellent at it out in the world, basically doing it on my behalf, was great, because everyone was like, that's Sam, hilarious with the GIFs. And I was like, I really am hilarious with the GIFs.
That's awesome. I love that you just owned it. Thank you so much for taking time and talking to us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me in.
We've done over 200 interviews now, and I gotta say, I've been looking forward to this sit down with Sam for a very long time, and it was sure worth the wait. He's like no other agent. Such a great guy and a mind like no other. I'm a fan.
This is Jason Flom,
John Valentino,
Jesse Lundy,
Dan Smalls,
Gino Shelton,
David Simone,
Ant Taylor,
Natalia,
Harvey fucking Leeds here
on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
This week, we're going to give you all a special glimpse of Ticketmaster's new program, The Verified Fan. Joining us in the podcast is Ticketmaster's David Marcus.
You've been on the podcast before, but I really wanted to have you back to talk about Verified Fan.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a really interesting year. 2017, we did 63 tours and Broadway productions with Verified Fan. Taylor Swift in particular was really visible, got a lot of attention, but also a lot of pushback, a lot of surmising what it might be, what was wrong with it, why it was a pain in the ass, too many hoops. And I think the opportunity to talk about it, put it in context really helps. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
When I saw you roll it out yesterday, it was like, dude, this needs to be explained to everyone, because I don't think, unless you're producing the top tier world tours, that maybe everybody understands how cool this is.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Let me frame it. The fundamental challenge we're dealing with is ticketing, even today, based on a concept that evolved 40 years ago or beyond. And it's this idea of time-based, first come, first served, anonymous ticket selling, right? In the sense of at 10 o'clock, I take all my tickets as a promoter or venue, and I make them available, and a line forms to acquire those tickets, and everybody grabs them as fast as they can. And then I'm sold out. Right? That's the fundamental concept of ticket selling.
Familiar with this? We used to do it the lines at the record store when we were kids, right?
Right. So the line at the record store was actually really useful because you had people working with people. You had a human seller and a human buyer, and everybody could see where they were in line.
And it built excitement. There was like the interaction.
Oh, yeah. You met people. Like, it had its own social sort of currency with it. It was cool. But just the straight commerce of it, you knew where you were. You could see where you were in line, right? You had a sense of where you were. So that's what triggered the 10 a.m. on sale, by the way, right? Retail stores opening at 10. And then we decided we were going to sell tickets over the phone. And so when the retail store opened at 10 and the telephones were open, we figured we'd open them at 10 also, because it had to be fair. There was a line at the retail store. Now we're going to have a line, air quotes, on the phone.
All right, because you had to be lucky enough to get through because there was only so many operators and you had to keep calling.
Humans working with humans, operators working with human buyers, right? So you're at human speed. Then the internet starts. Well, we open the stores at 10. We open the phones at 10. We're going to open the internet at 10. So people come in at 10 and they buy. But now you have humans working with machines because the machine is the seller. There's no human on the other end. The only thing that gates how fast that machine seller can transact is how fast humans can interact with the form that the seller relies on, right? Here's my name. Here's how many tickets I want. Here's my credit card number. Go. How fast that can happen is how fast those tickets can sell. Until two things happen that were critical. One, the secondary market, the liquid internet-based secondary market was created, right? StubHub 2012. 2003, which allows anonymous postings of massive volumes of tickets on an internet marketplace where anonymous buyers can come and buy anytime.
You're talking about the scalpers.
Well, I'm just talking about the secondary, right? The idea of a marketplace, of an electronic
Anybody that's
marketplace.
reselling something you bought, whether you're selling for face value or not.
Yeah. So that is created, and that starts to be a big business. And now people say, well, the only thing that stops me from participating in that marketplace is having tickets. And the only thing that stops me from getting tickets is being able to acquire them faster than the normal consumers can. And wow, there's software that does this. So if I can make money flipping tickets on StubHub, and I figure I can make enough money, I should be able to invest in software that can help me get tickets faster, right? Like it's a natural incentive structure. So you have the rise of the bot, right? Which is just a piece of software that fills out a Ticketmaster form faster than a human can do it. And so because bots are infinitely replicable, they're relatively low cost, especially relative to the upside here. I mean, you can get a bot for $1,000, right? That does all the Ticketmaster stuff. All of a sudden, the incentives are there to invest in software to fill out these forms. And what that means is for the average human who's going to the Ticketmaster site at 10 o'clock to buy tickets, it's not even there at a disadvantage. There's no hope that if you're a consumer for a show that's got heavy bot traffic, that you're going to beat the bots, because the bots can fill out that form and can reserve tickets in milliseconds. The time it takes for you to go and figure out, am I at the right venue? Is this the right map? What price level do I want? They're reserving the tickets, and we fight them. We battle them. We use software. We use all kinds of stuff to keep the bots out of it. But last year we were looking at something like 20 billion bot attempts.
That's an amazing number.
It is literally getting to the point where it's overwhelming. And we do a pretty good job beating them back. I saw there was a tour today I got a report on. We beat back 2.5 million bots on a single on sale. That's a lot. We beat them back though. We stopped them. Some get through. It's unfair to fans. So what do? You keep fighting, you keep fighting, you keep fighting, or you look at the core of the problem. And the core of the problem is this anonymous first come, first serve selling where the tickets are distributed to whoever hits the form first. Whoever gets through it fastest.
First come, first serve.
Right. So our challenge is, how do we preserve the speed of the on sale? Because that's important. We want to be able to sell tickets quickly. We want to be effective and efficient. But at the same time, make sure that we're not selling to bots. We want to sell to people. Well, you have to know who's on the other end of a transaction. That's the seed of verified fan. How do we know who we're selling to before we do the transaction, right? Before they come in. So we decided we'd create this registration process. It's really simple. You come in, name, mobile phone number, email address. I want to go see, pick the tour, right? Pearl Jam, Taylor Swift, U2, whatever. Register, submit. We collect all that registration information. On average, 3 days of registration. We take that data, we run it through our algorithms. We look for patterns. We look for signals. We got a lot of data. We've seen a lot of patterns. We can do a lot of pretty sophisticated math and score everybody and get a really good sense of who is going to use the tickets if we invite them to buy tickets, and who is going to resell the tickets if we invite them to buy tickets. And we invite those we predict are going to use, and we don't invite those we predict are going to resell. And that is fundamentally what verified fan is. It's really simple. It's really straightforward. And we can take that pool of people and give them each a unique passcode, an identifier. So I know that's Steiny. He's code XYZ123. Here he comes. It's 10 o'clock. Let him in. Get a ticket.
How long does the window last? Because at a certain point, the code devaluates, right? If they don't hit it?
No, it's like any other pre-sale. We typically do verified fan as a pre-sale. And so it's good for however long the pre-sale lasts.
They can't log in until that minute, but once they hit that minute, they can do it until the show goes on sale.
They can do it, until that pre-sale is over, right? So if you're Ed Sheeran or Harry Styles, and you've got hundreds of thousands of people who have registered and been verified, and we give them codes, they come in, they buy tickets, still time-based. They're not competing against bots anymore. They're only competing against other fans. So now it's human speed. We still sell out these shows in minutes. Ticketmaster is really good at selling lots of tickets really fast. And you put enough people in that system, shows go fast. We're not talking about millions of tickets, right? We're talking about 10,000 tickets divided by 3. So you got 3,500 transactions that can happen in a city. That goes fast.
You guys are working on a system that is built for bigger acts when it comes to the system so far. This is what you guys are experimenting with. It seems to me this could be used on any level moving forward, and this could be a great way to get tickets into the fan's hand.
First of all, Taylor was a very unique application of something beyond verified fan. We've had about half dozen to a dozen artists who've taken the verified fan engine, right, which is this predictor. Are you going to go or are you going to resell? That's verified fan.
You're using an algorithm that you guys created.
Yeah, it's just a behavior predictor. But my point is that we can add a campaign layer on top of that, where we can take that pool of people who we think are going to go to the show, and we can take that undifferentiated pool of people and turn that into a line, right? And create some order out of that, right? We can rank people. Depeche Mode, Imagine Dragons, Foo Fighters, Linkin Park, Taylor Swift, all did this. Taylor's was the most elaborate, but all these guys did this where they basically said, hey, we're going to create a queue based on other activities you engage in. Did you buy my record? Did you tweet? Did you invite people on Facebook? And when we do that, we can create a more human experience. With Taylor, we were able to take 1 million people who participated in that program, and we were able to order them by market, literally in a line, one by one, and then let them come buy tickets 3 per minute per market. 3 people per minute per market means you can put them in an interactive map. It's not best available, sold out in 2 minutes.
You get to choose your seat.
You get to pick any seat you want in the stadium. And that was super high risk because we were doing this for the first time on one of the biggest tours in the world ever. But it couldn't have been cooler because we watched people convert at a rate of about 85%, which is an unheard of e-commerce rate.
What rate?
85% conversion rate.
That's unheard of.
It's unheard of. And what we saw was, oh my God, when you treat these people like the huge fans they are, and you reward them with choice, and you don't rush them through something, you can get amazing results. And we had great feedback. Oh my God, this is so cool. I got to pick my seat. We love you, Taylor. We love you, Ticketmaster. No one ever says we love you, Ticketmaster. Those moments were really cool. Were people confused about how the boosts were going to rank them in line? Yeah, it's a new thing. Do people not sometimes understand this idea of I got to register? I had a chance, everyone says. Now I have to register? I don't understand. So we have to do a better job at that. We have to get consumers used to the fact there's a benefit here. It's worth it. Come, take a minute, register. It's 30 seconds. We'll invite you to buy tickets if you're a fan. You might get tickets, you might not. We don't make more tickets. There's still 1 million people who want these tickets, but we can make it so that you're not competing against the bots. And that's fundamentally the promise of Verified Fan. Is this only for the biggest acts in the world? It's not. It works in any size venue, with any size audience, in any genre. It works even regardless of demand. Like, you don't have to have Harry Styles demand, because as a promoter, think about the value of having this data. I know wherever my show is, wherever my tour is playing, who wants to come and how many people there are that want to come. You can ask them, how many tickets do you want? You can ask them, what price level do you want? You can ask them, what prices are you willing to pay? You can gather a huge amount of really useful data as a promoter, as an artist, that helps you plan your marketing allocation. Do I have a second show in this city? We were able to tell Taylor's team where they had guaranteed second shows that they could go up with at the on sale. They didn't have to wait to roll and see how it was selling. We knew you have more than enough demand in this market to sell 2 shows. We knew markets where they might not have had a show planned where they could add a show. We knew markets where they were thinking about a show that they didn't have a show. The power of having that demand, if you're a concert promoter, if you're an artist, before you've ever put a ticket on sale, that's really useful too. There's more work to be done. Verified Fan is far from perfect. We've got some consumer stuff we got to do. We've got some industry stuff we've got to do. We got to make it easier for people to understand. We got to make it easier for consumers to participate in. But 65 tours later, I think at this point, we just did Elton. We're doing Pearl Jam next week. The fundamentals are there. We can collect demand, aggregate that demand, and sell tickets to those people really easily, really effectively, and in a way that empowers promoters and artists with the tools they need to make really good business decisions.
You guys just went so big with Verified with Taylor. What led to like having the balls to make that swing?
One of the first things I said to the team was, this is either going to make our careers or end them. It was super high risk, but we really had a good sense of what we were capable of. And we sat with Louis Messina, and we sat with Taylor's management, and we presented that vision. And to their credit, they bought it. It was, we can connect your album launch campaign to the tour. It was, we can help you think about how to price your tour and give you a bunch of data. We can help you really reward fans who are engaged with tickets that are cheaper than the tickets they're going to buy in the public on sale. We can help you with marketing. We can help you with digital mobile tickets. We can help you with access control. And when they said we're in, I mean, there was a moment we looked at each other and said, what do you mean?
What did we just sell?
What do you mean? But there were a team of probably 60 people who worked on this from April of 2017 through December. And to their great credit, they crushed it.
It's amazing that you guys took that swing and at that level. And Jared came on the podcast, Jared Smith, the week that this was going on.
Yeah, I actually had to cancel my trip to Aspen because this was going on. But look, you get to a point where you trust your team. Jared was in all the meetings all the way up where we would lay it out every week. Here's where we are. Here's what the risks are. There was a lot of stuff we thought about doing and we didn't do because we weren't confident we could execute it.
So things will be added later that you guys still have hopes for.
Yeah, I mean, look, I said this when I was on the podcast before. We really care deeply about serving the artist. And to serve the artist, you have to be able to deliver for the fan. It would be really easy for Ticketmaster to sit back and rely on its exclusive venue contracts and just let tickets go out the door and chips fall where they may, right? Shit goes on the secondary. It is what it is. But that's not our DNA. That's not what Live Nation Entertainment is about. We are about the artist. They wrote the songs. They're putting on the show. These are their fans. And we have to represent. We have to connect them to their fans. And that requires that you innovate and take risk, put your money where your mouth is, and get in the game.
With the algorithm that you guys have invented, would it also tell you that maybe we're playing too big of venues and we shouldn't be playing arenas, we should be playing theaters before it goes on sale?
We can run a model for you based on the registrations and pretty much predict exactly how many tickets you're going to sell. A couple tours, one in particular sticks out. It was a really big arena tour. We did a verified fan registration and I was able to pick up the phone and call the promoter and say, hey, heads up, this is not looking good. Like, demand is not there.
Did they make the shift or did they ignore it?
They took that information into account. I think it was too late to make a big shift, but you rethink your pricing, you rethink your price levels, you rethink how you're going to go to market, you rethink your marketing, you do the best you can. And I think that's one of the promises of Verified Fan and one of the things we're really excited about.
The right shows in the right size venue.
That and empowering promoters with good information in enough time for the promoters to make good decisions.
I'm about empowering the promoters. Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah, man. Like, demand-driven concert promotion takes the risk out, allows you guys to do better business, make better bets, make more of them, understand your fans better. I think that's where the future's going here. We heard about it at Polestar, right? There was a conversation that Geiger led, and the whole conversation about streaming was about it being personalized, right? And about how the world of media is getting to be personalized. And the internet is about taking one-to-many and making it one-to-one. We have that opportunity in ticketing. We have the opportunity to make individual connections with people, understand what they want, what shows they want to see, where they want to sit, what they want to pay, and not make them race each other to buy tickets, but sell out concerts based on the demand data that we have in our possession and not based on the hope that when we drop the gate, enough people rush in to take all the tickets off the system.
Man, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to talk to me about Verified Fan.
Fun to be here.
It was cool to have David here to break down Verified Fan for us. He did a full interview back on episode 41. It happens to be our second highest rated episode of all time. If you haven't heard it, feel free to go check it out. He's one of the most amazing speakers I've ever heard. And it was certainly great to actually understand what Verified Fan is all about.
Hey, it's Henry Glasscock, aka Crystal Pistol from WME, here live at Promoter 101.
This is the inspirational part of Promoter 101. We are joined by Invictus Entertainment's Jim Cressman. He is one of the last independent promoters in Canada. He is also a 3-time Canadian Country Music Awards manager, promoter, and agent. That's the triple crown 3 times in a row for Invictus Entertainment's Jim Cressman. We're very happy to join him on the podcast.
I think it's more of a 3-peat than a triple crown.
It's a triple crown 3-peat is exactly what it is, Dan.
Whatever it is, he is one of the most positive guys I've ever met, and hell of a dude, and a great promoter, manager, record label. He does it all. Let's get into this interview. King of the country music, Jim Cressman, dude, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Canada's your playground, but you've been moving into Alaska and Hawaii a little bit, working from the club, developing acts through the theaters and playing in the arenas quite a bit.
Yeah, we really built our business on going into marketplaces that were underserviced. So a lot of the secondary and tertiary markets. And the mandate for that was finding a way in this day and age where artists are not making as much money off recorded music to monetize marketplaces that were really not even on the map or on the radar or front of mind for the artists and their teams in Canada. Now, in the US, there are plenty of people, including yourself, doing a great job in major markets and tertiaries. But in Canada, nobody was really making that a priority.
Unlike most promoters in the U.S., you're a one-stop shop. You're like Madison House. You do it all, right?
I started as an agent almost 20 years ago, and I just sort of continued to challenge myself to learn, grow, adapt, evolve so that we could add more value to the artists that we were working with. And at one point, that meant adding a management component. I had sort of this tipping point in my business where I was representing a number of acts who sort of all fired managers at the same time. And they were coming to me asking for help on that front. You know how it is in this business where sometimes you want to add value, but you're also the first person to question your credentials, right? If you're a person of high standards, you usually have a lot of questions about your abilities and your acumen. And it was my wife, who's also a partner in our company. We are a mom and pop shop, who said, you know, in a lot of ways, you're managing the careers of a lot of these artists that you've worked with for years. So why don't you just step up and open up that facet of the business? So I did. That panned out really well. We started the label imprint to just augment our services for a lot of the artists that we managed. And then I found that there were underserviced marketplaces in Canada that could use content. A lot of artists looking to tour deeper in Canada. So one of the big complaints I would run into with agents down here.
When you say deeper, you're talking about playing Toronto and Vancouver, right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
You have two markets there,
right? Montreal, yeah.
You really do go into it. I mean, more than just playing the London of it. You guys go into the Hamiltons and what have you, right?
Yeah, I mean, Fort McMurray, Alberta, Cranbrook, British Columbia, Penticton, British Columbia.
Moose Jaw, right?
Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan. Nothing looks better on a touring t-shirt than Moose Jaw. So that's been really beneficial because the artist gets an opportunity to play to a fresh audience. In many cases, these cities that we're playing are 4 to 6 hours away from the major markets. So they're doing record merch numbers in these places. And like I said before, they're monetizing marketplaces that weren't even on the map for them previously. And we do a good job at making sure that the venues are up to snuff, that the shows are produced properly. And, you know, we've been able to, frankly, punch above our weight and get some real A-plus players into some of these places.
I don't know how you're finding time to promote as many shows a year as you are. And you were promoting a lot of shows, right? I mean, what's the number roughly?
Around 300 to 400 shows in promoting.
So just your promoter load is more than most companies will do in a year anyway. How are you finding all the time to oversee all these projects and divisions?
This might sound a little wannabe Tony Robbins, but I'm really driven by gratitude. I love what I do. Like, I never feel like I'm tapped out on energy because a huge part of what we do is strategy and motivation. And I love that. I love that with artists. I love strategizing with their teams, finding a way to break new ground. And I love challenges. So rising to that daily is frankly one of the things that keeps me going.
Let's talk about the videos that you're doing. You've done a series of them now, and they've been extremely successful. Some of them have gone viral.
So my mandate with the videos were to give something that I may not ever see a return from, quote unquote. And what I mean by that is putting out content. I'm not looking to sign new artists, but I'm putting out content for new artists because I was noticing this vacuum of knowledge, information, and a lot of it, frankly, just practical shit that artists needed to know at a very basic level that just wasn't available in a format that was easily digestible to the new generation.
You do them like weekly?
Yep, weekly.
And they can be found at what website?
We're putting them on our Invictus Entertainment Group Facebook page and on YouTube. So they're readily available. I've had a lot of artists reach out to me and go, this content's tremendous. You know, this has helped me not sign with somebody that's considering signing with, or the flip side of that, getting the right criteria in my mind so I can seek out the right partner to help add value to my touring business.
We should talk about your addiction to the gym.
Yeah, totally. I mean, all of us work on different frequencies and different levels. But for me, if I'm feeling like I'm physically all there, then the rest of my life starts to kind of fall into place as well. We're in a business where oftentimes we're running from fire to fire, putting them out. We're very reactive. And if you can take that 30 minutes to an hour a day to just be focused on something physically so you can't be on your iPhone, it forces you to open up those channels in your mind to think about and create some vision for what you're doing. You know, maybe a problem or a challenge I'm facing, or I start to ask myself questions which usually stimulate some vision for where I want my company to go or some other mountain that I just decide I want to climb.
What you've got going is something that we don't see a lot of. Canada has limited itself to promoters. It's almost a monopoly now that Union has become part of Live Nation. So there's this amazing network of promoters that are all built in-house that, for the most part, have not changed since Jay put them together when he was living in Toronto. Jay put together an amazing team for House of Blues when he was there. And most of those guys are still there. You still got Riley running the show up there. You've got this amazing team. And across the board, you've got Ian and you've Jason Grant. It's just like
Hagenson and
it's amazing.
I know. They're all best in show guys. I mean, Live Nation obviously sometimes is a collaborator for us, sometimes a competitor, but the guys themselves, they're all best in show and they're all performing at a very high level and they're all very entrepreneurial minded. And I don't mind competing with that. Frankly, I think one of the downfalls of our business is that it's very entrepreneurial, but some people, once they get established, the last thing they want is competition. They almost feel like they're entitled to a monopoly. I never want to be in that place because when I'm competing, I'm at my best. When I'm competing with these people, it reminds me that I have to bring my A game to the table. And that is more inspiring to me than being in a position where I've climbed to the level prolifically or through adding value to a point where I get to be a monopoly. I never want that to happen.
Fuck that, man. If I can have the market to myself and be a monopoly, I'm fucking taking it. But there really isn't a lot of independent promoting in that market, and you have become a rising star of independent promoters across Canada. There's not a whole lot of competing offers that can exist, but you can send a tour offer for all of Canada.
Yeah, it's the land of opportunity right now, and a big part of that is being in the right place at the right time. Live Nation swallowing up the Union, even though they still are doing tremendous business up and down, secondaries, tertiaries, and majors, obviously, there's an alternative with our company. And frankly, I think that puts artists in a more empowered position to make the best decisions that they need to make. And listen, I probably lose to Live Nation when we go up against them 90% of the time, but that's fine with me. That 10% I'm getting is more than enough business to keep my company a going concern in the marketplace.
You're doing this volume and the cash flow is clearly there. It continues to build. You've done it to the point where you've built your volume up to doing several arena shows simultaneously.
Yeah, and we're also developing our own content, which is where the booking division and the management division comes into play. I mean, we've got this young guy named Brett Kissel, who's a 2-time CCMA, Canadian Country Music Association, Male Artist of the Year, Fans' Choice last year. We are doing a cross-Canada tour. Part 1 of that tour is over 50 dates. And so we are...
Just in Canada?
Just in Canada.
Are there 50 markets in Canada?
There are, believe it or not.
What are you playing, Walmart parking lots?
We're playing a lot of doubles and triples. And we haven't even announced part 2 of that tour, which is going to include dates in the territories on the East Coast. And we're just waiting for some festival plays that'll happen next summer before we add that leg of it.
You guys have got this 30% rule for Canadian radio.
Correct.
You can go to Canada and record the album, get a Canadian engineer, and you've pretty much fulfilled what it takes to be a Canadian product.
2 of 4 components need to be Canadian out of music, the artist, the lyrics, and the production. And then you're good. So if the artist and the production is Canadian, but the songs were written by American songwriters, that qualifies as Canadian content. The one thing about Canada is a lot of people talk about how we don't really have a culture because we fall into this realm of multiculturalism, but there's definitely a Canadian sound, a Canadiana rock sound.
Canadiana?
Canadiana.
Is that a term? Or did you just coin that?
I believe it's a term. I'm not going to take credit for it. Not today anyway. But there's this sound that, again, like I'm not sure what inspires it. I'm not sure why it exists, but it's definitely there. And the bands that have tapped into that have found a way to create a going concern in Canada that's different and separate from anything they could ever have in the United States.
When you're developing acts, are you thinking about just developing them in Canada, or are you starting to think about breaking them into the States and globally as well?
We're always thinking global, always. We always want to build a story at home, but we want to take that product globally.
So is there a plan after the 50 markets to maybe break into America a little bit?
Absolutely. We have Kissel signed with William Morris in the States. There's an American management component. For me, I think it's breaking him geographically, quadrant by quadrant. So maybe it's starting in the Pacific Northwest, building a story there, and then marching that across the country. But I think America's literally there are as many viable markets in California as there are in the entire country of Canada. So you can come to into a market, build it, get some national prominence and significance through what's happening with, Sirius Satellite Radio is a huge help for Canadian artists. And then, the internet has taken down a lot of barriers to entry. This sounds a little naive today, but in 5 years, you may not need an American label partner to make an impact in the United States if you have the right product and the right strategy behind it.
Who's the RA at William Morris? Who's responsible in America?
Nate Town is taking on all the day-to-day.
Good guy. We like Nate.
Love Nate.
William Morris is a young independent agency on the rise.
Yeah, I've heard a few things about them.
New startup.
Yeah, new startup. They're keenly interested in Brett. Nate spends a lot of time in Canada, obviously works the Canadian territory quite heavily. So he's got his ear to everything that's happening up there and is really paying attention. And it's one thing I have to say is Canada being the second largest country music market in the world, at least in Nashville, the agents really pay attention to what's going on up there.
Country music, as big as it is in America, you forget, really is a North American product. And for the most part, doesn't travel around the borders too much. Even Canada is a stretch for some of the acts.
Yeah, and I think when country music was more rooted in sort of traditional American family concepts and ideals, I think that it was a different format. But what we're finding now is that country music is a new home for a lot of singer-songwriter artists. So there are a lot of artists 20, 30 years ago who might have broken on pop or rock radio who now are finding a home with their music on a lyrically driven format like country music. And obviously the production has changed. What's accepted as quote unquote country is a different paradigm than what it was 20 years ago. And I feel like that's just going to grow the base of that format worldwide.
Okay. And you're a fairly young guy. To be an arena promoter in this business, that's relatively unheard of. It's pretty young. And you own your own company. You're self-backed, right?
Yes.
An entrepreneur in this business that's financially self-sufficient, running his own company. And you have a lot of employees now, right? How many employees on the team?
We have 8 full-time.
It's a pretty decent size overhead.
Yeah, we definitely have overhead. There's no doubt about it. There are times where it feels like even at our minuscule level that we're feeding a machine. We've got a great culture. We've got people who are all like-minded, who are asking themselves the question of what can I bring to the table instead of what can I get out of this transaction. And that mindset has really helped us stand out in Canada. And like I alluded to before, we offer a great alternative to the Live Nations of the world.
You are possibly one of the most positive people I've ever met. Positive about what you're doing. You're always upbeat about it. When you're having a bad show, because we all do. I don't care how good of a booker you are. If you were a professional concert promoter, you've lost some real money. The show lost 20 grand. Man, we're not kicking any back, but pick out a hoodie.
Pick out a hoodie, exactly.
Most expensive t-shirt collection in the world.
Yeah, I think when something goes wrong, I ask myself 3 questions. The first one is, what can I learn from this? You can always learn something. If something goes off the rails with a concert that you felt very confident about and you get an ass kicking financially, you can always learn something from it. The second thing is there anything ridiculous or funny about this that I can laugh about? Maybe not today, but in a few days. And the third thing is this going to matter in a year? And if you can ask yourself those 3 questions, what you'll quickly realize is that something that feels like it's a really rough day or a rough moment is probably something you're going to ride out quite easily over the long term.
Those are great 3 questions. Can I add a 4th?
Yes.
Do you ask yourself, why am I talking to myself? I'm just kidding.
Hardly ever do it out loud. Usually it's in my head.
This is an internal monologue.
Yeah.
Like Daniel Stern Wonder Years.
Yeah, there's always a narrator.
Hey, I want to thank
Morgan
you so
Freeman.
much for taking the time and talking to us on Promoter 101.
My pleasure.
The legendary Jim Cressman. Thank you.
Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much, Dan.
Well, as you see, Jim does it all. The labels, promoting, managing. I don't think he ever sleeps, but he is an impressive dude, and he is always in a good mood. Shout out to Jim. Thanks for stopping by and talking to us on Promoter 101.
Hey, what's going on? This is Bubbles.
This is Julian.
And this is Ricky.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Celebrating birthdays the week of March 2nd to the 8th, 2018.
Friday, that's March 2nd. Happy birthday to Randy Wade, UTA's Doug Edley, Allie Hamblin, Mr. Happy, APA's Andrew Ellis.
Saturday, the Wolf Trap's Sarah Beasley, NS2's Boone Carter, Anthony Pitcher, and Patricia Britton.
On Sunday, going to wish a happy birthday to AG's Trevor Swinson, Soda Jerk's Mike Barsh, United Concerts Dave McKay, Izat Solomon, Kent Shelton, Beth McMillan, and the legendary agent at Paradigm, Dan Weiner.
Monday, Owen Cavan, Keith Williams, Vicky Infinito, Keith Mullet, and Jared Woods.
On Tuesday, giving a shout out to Todd Hunter and Gail Miller.
Wednesday, Jeff Wills, Mr. AKA Do More of That.
On Thursday, March 8th, wishing a happy birthday to Kia Novino and Dan Steinberg's pop, Richard Steinberg.
Hey, happy birthday to everyone from the gang at Promoter 101.
This is Marcia Vlasic, president of AGI Talent Agency on Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to one of us, send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net.
The quote of the week comes to us from Luke's partner at Works Entertainment, David Britz. You've built an a cappella empire.
We're going to be back next week, same pod channel, same pod time, but this week we're going to be in ILMC in London. We have some heavy hitters stopping by, including a Nashville legend and Conway Entertainment Group's Mr. Tony Conway, the Wolf Trap's Sarah Beasley, and a war story from Live Nation's Andy Levitt. Plus, Dan and I are going to be joined by a very special surprise co-host. Who might it be, Dan?
Let me just say that he's one of the biggest promoters in the world, and he is just charming as all hell. There's just so many options there, and I'm not giving shit away. But until then, we're wishing you sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi, I'm David Kells with Bridgestone Arena and the Nashville Predators, and you're listening to Promoter 101.